Hello, welcome to CivilNet. My guest today is Salpi Ghazarian, the director of Civilitas. Salpi, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Did I have a choice?
No, you didn't. We're here today together because the other day we were talking about the things that took place this past year and how intense and emotional, chaotic it was. And yet, for some reason, we were quite calm about it.
We've learned, no?
So that's why I wanted for us to have this conversation so that our viewers could experience the kinds of things we experienced this past year. Many things can be said about 2013. We had 2 elections. We had an almost assassination, an almost revolution. We really had deepening cynicism, and yet we had what, in my opinion anyway, a real elevated social consciousness. Activism resurged again in Armenia. What were the peaks and valleys for you? I mean, if you could speak from your heart, because I know that sometimes we try not to. As a reporter, we try not to. As somebody who runs a foundation, who's been in Armenia for many years. But if you could speak from your heart, what were those things that really impacted you?
Armenia is a place where the peak is the valley. It's everything is a complex, sometimes chaotic mix of things. And so what were the peaks and valleys? I think most of the peaks were also valleys, it seems to me. For example, 2 things, if we talk from the inside out and also a global thing. I mean, the most important thing, I think, this year for all of us was the decision on September 3rd made by the president that no, we would not enter into the association agreement with Europe. And this sounds like a political answer. You said speak from your heart, and it sounds to me, it might sound to some people that here I am giving a political response. But Armenia is a place where politics are what affect us every day, which is also why it's a wonderful place, because your small effort produces results comparatively quickly, as opposed to many other places where systems are so entrenched. Here, unfortunately, there are either no systems or weak systems. And so a decision like that, a decision that we will not go to Vilnius, we will not initial a 1,000-page document that is basically a roadmap to democratization. And what does democratization mean? It means that we will be able to look forward to equal rights, to less impunity, to more opportunity, to basic human dignity, respect, knowing that the government trusts me and that I have responsibilities with and for that government. All of that is denied us overnight. That was certainly a peak and a valley.
And a valley at the same time. Yes, I remember your state of mind. All of us were shocked. But there will be many who will argue that for Armenia, the security guarantees were so critical to our continued existence, taking into consideration the unresolved conflict of Nagorno-Karabakh, and that Armenia really didn't have much of a choice. And then we come to the question, is the egg before the chicken.
I'm done with those explanations.
Okay.
I'm done with those explanations. I'm done internally, I'm done externally. When people sitting outside say, oh, gee, Armenia didn't have a choice, or people sitting inside, oh, gee, we don't have a choice, this is who we're stuck with. This is not who or what we're stuck with. We do have choices to be stuck if that's the choice we've made. Armenia does have huge security needs. Armenians have never and don't need to poke Russia in the eye. But we don't therefore necessarily have to make a 180-degree black and white choice that says no to everything non-Russian. Russia itself has relations with the European Union. Today, Ukraine is dilly-dallying with that still. There are countries that can handle 2 friends, 2 partners, 2 allies. We can't. We can't. We're not nuanced enough, sophisticated enough, careful enough, sharp enough. Of course we are. But why don't we do it? That's why it was such a valley, that these roads are closed to us. On the other hand, we all understood, I think finally, that conscientious level you were referring to, that we have choices. And some people said too late. I don't think too late. People started expressing that frustration. A group of civil society organizations that form part of the Eastern Partnership Civic Platform here in Armenia got together and said, look, we have some basic expectations of our government. Somebody needs to come and sit and talk to us about what is expected of us in this customs union. Somebody needs to explain to us what the choices are. Somebody needs to talk to us and needs to say what they expect of us and we expect of them. Otherwise, we want a different government.
Yeah, it's about transparency, and because you referred to it, not only the civil society organizations, which we can talk about a bit later, but about this sense that we have felt in the last year particularly. We see, especially among in a younger group of people, this rise in activism. Whether it has proper direction, whether it has content or not, that's a separate issue. But certainly from our own personal experiences, we can see that whether it was the events that triggered them or whether we were ready to finally come out on the streets sometimes when necessary because other platforms are closed to us. How did that make you feel? I mean, do you see promise there?
I see promise. I think it is amazing that this generation, it's the fearless generation, huh? These aren't the 40-year-olds who are in jobs with family requirements and responsibilities, who remember the euphoria of 1988. They were 18, 19, 20, and the disappointments that came after. These aren't them. These are the generation who were raised to believe that it's all about them. It's their country and it's a new era, and they're expressing their frustrations, and it's wonderful. What isn't wonderful is that because there is a lack of context, there is a lack of decent media, there is a lack of decent debate, there is a lack of tolerance, there is a lack of pluralism. As a result, often they too are stuck in this black and white set of choices. Sometimes we have a hard time reining them in and saying, look, our staff, you're here, you're media, you have an incredibly strong tool in your hands, and yet learning how to use that at each step of the way because there are no examples out there. So it's wonderful, but it's also very frustrating, frightening in the sense that, I'm going to say this, I say it privately a lot, I'm going to say it publicly. You know, people use the term citizen journalism a lot, you know, and young journalists and all of that. And sometimes I think, you know, expecting citizen journalists is a little bit like expecting citizen nuclear scientists. You know, you don't do it in the abstract.
Right.
Just because you want to doesn't mean you are.
Well, I want to be a physicist too, but I mean...
You know what? It's going to take a few years. So that process, is it slow? Is it effective? Is it impactful? Is it wasteful? And since we're doing this in English, I need to say, this is where the diaspora has to kick in, and this is where the international community has to kick in. It is absurd to expect a country and a people in 22 years to advance the 400 years that it took Europe to advance through the Reformation, through the Enlightenment, through the Industrial Revolution, through miserable wars that shook them up. It's impossible to expect us to do that in 20 years, 22 years alone. But what do we do? Take 400 years?
I think the sense of urgency is that a lot of people, ourselves included sometimes, will think that we don't have the time. We don't have the luxury of time with the demographic situation, with the geopolitical situation, with the economic situation.
We don't.
I think that's where that sense of urgency comes, that we want to see those changes happen quick.
Therefore, the variables have to change. Therefore, the inputs have to change. They have to increase. They have to be more impactful. They have to be sustained. We're not saying anything new, but this year has demonstrated that there is room for cooperation after the presidential election. The group of diasporan activists with Armenian local activists together doing monitoring and making noise. The entire process of watching what is being done in Ukraine and Georgia has in some ways changed the way we here in Armenia approach this whole Europe customs union decision. The international community has to be more present. The diaspora has to be hugely more present.
Yeah, we have to find in those plugins for the diaspora so that they can then thoughtfully and in a deeper way engage with the processes taking place. Certainly we can talk for 3 hours, but I want to ask you a final question. As somebody who has been engaged in the processes of Armenia and continues to be, if you were the government, what would be on your agenda for the coming year?
I'll tell you, if I answered the first question more completely about the peaks and the valleys, I would have said the valliest of the valleys is the lack of trust and tolerance. And, you know, I don't know if I'm speaking from my heart or if I'm speaking from a political textbook. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. You don't have democracy if you don't have tolerance and trust. And we don't. The government doesn't trust or tolerate. It doesn't trust its people, and it doesn't tolerate any sort of questioning. Forget dissent. And the people don't trust the government, even when they try to do something halfway right, which I think, for example, the pension system is. I think there is a bit of right there, and yet we don't trust the right because there is so much baggage and distrust built in from so many other things. The absolute absence of that, I think, can only be replaced by good governance. It has to start from the top. Lots of other things can start from the bottom. But that one, trust and tolerance, has got to start from the top. Otherwise, there will never be room for a government to do even some right.
We get asked this question oftentimes, whether it has to be bottom up or top down. I think that, you know, both need to work together, obviously. Are you happy that 2013 is over, or will you take some lessons away from this year and apply them to what you plan on doing for the coming year?
A couple of things. One is that I'm glad 2013 is over. The criminal case that implicated us, Civilitas, the tax service that came with it, that is over, thankfully. Not all of it administratively, but the bulk of it is over. So I'm glad 2013 is gone. I am sorry that 2013 is going with so many loose ends, including the European and Customs Union dilemma. You know, 2013 was also a really difficult year in terms of coming face to face with a lot of young deaths. We spent a lot of time talking about and remembering Alan and Sose, the two diasporans who'd moved to Armenia. We talked very little about Ghazarian Goyan, a very young, bright violinist who went and studied in Germany and
died in a freak accident, I believe.
In a diving in a lake. All of which just makes me want to say that all of the challenges facing us, a lot of them aren't in our hands. Some of them are. And those that are, we're guilty if we don't do something about them. So I want to come through 2014 less guilty.
Well, I think we finally got you to speak from your heart. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for being our fearless leader here. And we hope that we will continue reporting, bringing the stories to our viewers in Armenia and around the world that oftentimes aren't being told. So thank you for giving us this platform. And I would like to wish all of our viewers a very happy New Year and a Merry Christmas, safe holiday season. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. What I would like to say to our viewers also is that what we do here is motivated from a sense of responsibility, certainly, but also a sense of love and ownership, not just for a country, but also for a people's past and future. And for that, we invite your participation, cooperation, understanding, and commitment. Happy New Year.